They say betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from the one you love most. Imagine standing on a cold street at midnight, your husband's mansion lights fading behind you as he slams the door, turning your world upside down when you're pregnant with his child. In that single moment, you vow never to be helpless again. This is the story of Sarah Dalton Harrington, a woman thrown away like a disposable trinket. But fate doesn't forget. Years later, she returns stronger than ever, armed with ambition and a burning need for justice, to buy the very company that made her ex-husband wildly rich. The clock read 11:47 p.m. on a cold December evening in Chicago as Sarah Dalton Harrington sat by the bay window in her living room, gently caressing her swelling belly. Her soft, dark hair fell over weary eyes. She was exhausted, not just from her pregnancy, but from the palpable tension that filled the house. Her husband, Ethan Harrington, was pacing in the hallway, phone pressed to his ear, his tone urgent and clipped. This was supposed to be their dream home, an elegant brownstone mansion overlooking a frozen Lake Michigan. They'd moved there a few months earlier, convinced that Ethan's budding business success would only continue to climb. Ethan, with his chiseled features, impeccable suits, and fiercely ambitious spirit, had always promised Sarah the world. Yet lately, the atmosphere had turned grim. The man who had once serenaded her with weekend getaways in Napa Valley and stolen kisses in the moonlight now barely offered a kind word. Sarah tried to ignore the growing knot of dread in her stomach. They'd been arguing for months over finances, his perpetual business trips, and most painfully, his growing coldness toward her. She sensed something shifting in him after he secured a round of angel investment from a well-known Texas billionaire who had once pitched on Shark Tank, the famed Mark Cuban. Ethan's startup, InnovaSpark, was on the verge of explosive growth, and with it came new faces, new women, and new pressures that seemed to erode the foundation of their relationship. Ethan hung up the phone abruptly and stormed into the living room. His expression was hard, his normally warm hazel eyes now distant. "Did I just hear you talking to my accountant earlier today?" he demanded. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "I just asked him about the medical insurance details. With the baby coming, we need to be sure." "No," Ethan snapped, cutting her off. "We don't need anything. You don't get to interfere in my business. You're not exactly a partner in InnovaSpark. You're just my wife. Can you understand that?" Sarah swallowed hard, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. This was not the man she'd fallen in love with. She had supported him through endless nights of building prototypes in their cramped apartment, skipping luxuries so they could invest in his dreams. She believed that once his idea took off, things would get better. But his success had become the wedge pushing them apart. "Ethan," she began, trying to sound calm, "I'm only looking out for our family. In about 3 months, we'll have a newborn. We need stability, not these random blow-ups and uncertain finances. You're spending more than you're making, and I'm worried." He scoffed, stepping closer, anger rolling off him in waves. "Stability? The only person destabilizing everything around here is you. Your constant nagging, your insecurities, your inability to just let me run my business in peace." Her mind flicked to the extravagant parties he'd started, hosting a swirling crowd of well-dressed tech investors, local celebrities, and socialites who flitted in and out of their home. She rarely recognized any of them, and it was clear they looked at her like an outsider in her own house. She mustered every ounce of courage she had left. "If you truly believe that, maybe we need help counseling, a mediator, something. This isn't just about us anymore, Ethan." He let out a harsh laugh. "Counseling? You think I have time for counseling when InnovaSpark is on the brink of sealing a multi-million-dollar deal? I don't need dead weight right now." Sarah felt a rush of cold fear as he used that phrase, dead weight, to describe her. She pressed a hand protectively over her belly. How could he talk like this? They were about to become parents. Ethan shook his head. "I've tolerated your meddling for too long. Your constant questions, your distrust, your talk about me wasting money. It's too much. This is my moment. Sarah, I won't let you ruin it." Time seemed to slow as he took a step back, scanned her from head to toe with contempt, and said the words that would forever echo in her mind. "You need to go," he said, his voice trembling with a cocktail of fury and arrogance. "Get out of my house." She blinked. "What?" "I said get out. Tonight." "Ethan, it's midnight. I'm pregnant." The words stumbled out of her mouth, heavy with disbelief and terror. He stalked to the closet and yanked out her winter coat, thrusting it at her. "Take your stuff and go. You can stay in some hotel or whatever. I don't care, but you're not staying here." Sarah's lips parted in shock. She struggled to find an argument, a plea, any thread of sanity to hold on to. Her legs felt weak, her stomach in knots, tears freely streaming down her cheeks. He was serious. "Please, Ethan, this is our child we're talking about. You can't just throw me onto the streets." He didn't respond. Instead, he grabbed her suitcase from the hallway, shoved it at her feet, and glared. In a daze, Sarah realized she had no choice. She glanced around the living room. She had so carefully decorated photos of their wedding in Santorini perched on the mantel, the couch where they'd once cuddled after a tough day, the echo of laughter they used to share. All of it had disintegrated into an unrecognizable wreck, spearheaded by the man she no longer knew. Struggling to catch her breath, Sarah donned her coat. She rummaged in her purse for her phone, her fingers trembling as she dialed her friend's number. "Izzy," she whispered when the call connected, her voice quivering. Can you come get me? Please. I'm out on the sidewalk." Isabella, Izzy Rodriguez, her closest friend since high school, responded in startled concern. "At this hour, Sarah? What's going on?" Sarah swallowed back sobs. "I'll explain later. Please just hurry." She glanced up at Ethan one last time, hoping for a flicker of remorse, of the man who had once loved her. But his face was a stone mask, eyes hard and unyielding. Without another word, she stepped into the winter night, Chicago's icy wind biting at her cheeks, tears freezing as they fell. He slammed the door behind her. The echo of that slam felt like a judge's gavel, final and damning. Sarah stood there alone on the doorstep of what had once been her home. Less than a minute later, the lock turned. She stared at the closed door, half expecting him to fling it open, rush out, and apologize. But it never happened. Lights dimmed inside as though the house itself was done with her. Hugging her coat tighter, she carefully made her way down the front steps, the small suitcase rattling behind her. In her womb, she felt a flutter, her unborn child, as if sensing her turmoil. On the curb, she waited, teeth chattering from cold and shock. The streets were eerily quiet, only the soft hum of distant traffic and the glow of streetlights to bear witness to her heartbreak. Minutes later, Izzy's car pulled up, headlights piercing the darkness. The friend's eyes were wild with concern as she jumped out and wrapped Sarah in a hug. "I'm here," Izzy murmured, guiding Sarah into the passenger seat. "I'm here for you." The moment she settled into the car, Sarah allowed herself one final backward glance at the mansion she had believed would be the setting for her happily ever after. The windows reflected the frosty moonlight, offering no welcome. A wave of nausea and heartbreak crashed over her. She inhaled deeply, placed both hands on her belly, and made a silent promise to the child inside. No matter what happened, she would fight for their future, find a way to give them the life they deserved. Ethan Harrington might have cast her aside in his pursuit of fame and fortune, but she would not disappear quietly. Life had a strange way of turning tables, and though she couldn't see it now, the seeds of her remarkable comeback were already planted. The neon vacancy sign flickered overhead, casting an unsteady glow on the sidewalk. It was 1:30 a.m. by the time Izzy drove Sarah to a nearby motel. They both knew it wasn't the safest place in Chicago, but in the dead of night, with snow drifting through the air, it felt like the only option. Sarah's eyes were raw from crying, her voice hoarse from recounting Ethan's final, cruel words. Izzy pulled into a parking spot outside the modest, single-story building. She turned off the engine and rested a gentle hand on Sarah's shoulder. "You're staying with me after tonight," she declared. "No friend of mine is going to be living in a dump like this." Sarah managed a wan smile. "I appreciate that, but let's just get through tonight. I'm not even sure how to think right now." They walked to the reception window, where a tired-looking clerk accepted Sarah's credit card. She silently thanked the heavens that it hadn't been shut down. Her heart sank at the meager balance she knew remained. She'd spent much of her savings on Ethan's grandiose Illusions fancy dinners, the move to the mansion, and supporting his business whenever he needed an extra infusion of cash. Room key in hand, the two women entered the small, dimly lit space. A single bed, a scuffed wooden table, and a worn armchair filled the cramped quarters. The walls, painted a dull beige, exuded an air of desolation. Sarah sank onto the bed. Izzy perched next to her, rubbing Sarah's back in circles. "You are not alone," she said firmly. "I'm sorry I couldn't get to you sooner." Sarah shook her head, tears threatening to spill again. "He changed, Izzy. Ever since Innova Sparks started attracting investors, it's like I don't even know him anymore. It's not just the money. It's the power, the freedom to do anything. The more successful he got, the more I felt him slipping away." Izzy's face hardened. "It's disgusting what he did, throwing you out at night when you're carrying his child. He'll regret it someday." A moment of heavy silence followed. "If only I had somewhere else to go," Sarah whispered. "I never thought I'd be in this position. That's what friends are for. Tomorrow, you're moving in with me. For as long as you need." "Got it." Sarah nodded, relief loosening her chest for the first time that night. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll pay you back." "Don't even go there," Izzy replied, shaking her head. "You just focus on taking care of yourself and your baby." By dawn, Izzy guided Sarah to her compact one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the city. It was no mansion, but it was safe and warm. After depositing Sarah's suitcase, they settled on the couch, letting silence stretch between them like a fragile thread. "It's yours," Izzy said softly. "The couch pulls out into a bed. I'll manage the rest." "Just rest." "All right." With exhaustion dragging her eyelids down, Sarah mumbled her gratitude before surrendering to sleep. When she awoke hours later, daylight streamed through the blinds, painting stripes on the living room carpet. She could hear the clatter of pans in the kitchen. "How about some scrambled eggs?" Izzy called. Sarah tried to smile, though her face felt stiff. "Sure," she croaked, forcing herself to stand. The cold light of day brought new anxieties. She placed a hand on her belly, feeling a soft flutter. The sensation reminded her of how much responsibility she now carried, and how alone she truly was in it. While they ate breakfast, Izzy opened her laptop. "You need to find a lawyer," she said, "just to see what your options are. He can't just throw you out and leave you with nothing." Sarah gave a shaky nod. "I can't afford a big-name lawyer," she admitted. "And Ethan, he'll have the best money can buy." Izzy set her fork down with a clink. "I have a cousin who handles family law. She's not high profile, but she's good. Let me call her. If she can't take your case, maybe she can refer you to someone who does pro bono work." Gratitude welled up inside Sarah. "Thank you," she said, her voice cracking. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "You won't have to find out," Izzy quipped, though her eyes were full of empathy. The days that followed were a whirlwind of legal consultations, awkward phone calls with Ethan's accountants, who refused to disclose anything without his permission, and dealing with the emotional fallout. Sarah repeatedly tried to contact Ethan. Each call went straight to voicemail. Each text remained unanswered. She felt a numb ache in her chest, mingled with simmering anger. How could the man she once adored vanish so thoroughly from her life? Despite the heartbreak, Sarah realized wallowing in despair wouldn't feed her or her unborn child. She needed a plan. She needed to stand on her own 2 feet. One Friday afternoon, she found herself walking into a battered women's resource center. The building was a simple brick structure, but inside it bustled with activity women talking in hushed tones, kids running around, volunteers stacking pamphlets. Sarah felt out of place among them. After all, she'd always been the supportive wife of an ambitious entrepreneur. But if life had taught her anything over the last week, it was how swiftly circumstances could change. A kind volunteer approached her. "Is this your first time here?" Sarah nodded, swallowing her pride. "I need help. My husband threw me out. I'm pregnant, and I don't have a job right now." Without judgment, the volunteer guided her to an intake desk and helped her fill out forms for assistance programs. They gave her information about prenatal care clinics job listings, and local charities offering temporary support. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. One crisp February morning, while sipping tea with Izzy in the apartment, Sarah found an odd sense of clarity, as if she'd slept long enough in the darkness and was ready to face the day. She remembered the dreams she once had starting her own business, maybe a consulting firm. Years ago, she had studied business administration at Northwestern University, but put her ambitions on hold to support Ethan's startup dream. She opened her laptop, breathed in the scent of possibility, and began searching for online courses if she could update her skill set, especially in digital marketing or project management. Perhaps she'd land a decent job before the baby arrived. Her eyes flicked to an ad for a Women in Tech scholarship sponsored by Oprah Winfrey's Foundation. Intrigued, she clicked the link. The program promised a fully funded 6-month course in entrepreneurship for women who faced adversity. A million doubts crowded her mind, but one resolute thought pushed them aside. She had nothing to lose by applying. Gathering her transcripts and old recommendation letters, Sarah poured her soul into the application essay. She wrote of resilience, of heartbreak turned into fuel for growth, of an unborn child who depended on her unwavering strength. When she hit the submit button, her heart pounded. She glanced at her phone background, a wedding photo of her and Ethan, which she hadn't changed yet. A spark of anger tinged her heartbreak, igniting determination. "Time to rewrite my story," she murmured, turning off the phone screen. Meanwhile, across town, Ethan Harrington was busy entertaining potential investors in InnovaSpark's brand new office tower. He strode through glass-walled conference rooms with a cocky swagger, discussing the next big pitch. The venture had ballooned beyond his wildest dreams after Mark Cuban took an interest in the proprietary software that predicted e-commerce trends. Ethan's phone buzzed, and he glanced at the screen. Sarah. He grimaced and sent it to voicemail. He had severed ties with her the moment he realized her worries might slow him down. To him, Sarah represented old baggage and needless constraints. The top-tier lawyers he'd hired assured him that while there would be some financial obligations due to her pregnancy, he could keep everything else. What was a monthly check or two in the grand scheme of his unstoppable ascent? Yet late at night in his penthouse suite, a lavish place perched high above the city, Ethan sometimes felt a pang of something. Not quite regret, more like unease. He'd stare at the Chicago skyline, illuminated by countless lights, thinking about the child that would soon enter the world without him. He shook his head, rationalizing that he was doing what he had to do. The baby would be provided for financially. As for Sarah, she had chosen to cross him with her incessant nagging and doubt. As far as he was concerned, this was business, and business was about winning. 2 weeks after submitting her scholarship application, Sarah was cleaning dishes in Izzy's kitchen when her phone rang. She almost didn't recognize the unknown number. Hello. Hello. This is Marie Thompson from the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Foundation. May I speak with Miss Sarah Harrington? Sarah's heart skipped. This is she. I'm pleased to inform you that you've been selected for our Women in Tech Scholarship Program. We reviewed hundreds of applications, and your story stood out. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, muffling a half-choked sob of relief. She managed a shaky, "Thank you. Thank you so much." The woman explained the details. Sarah would receive a stipend, online mentorship, and if she proved her capabilities, potential seed funding for a startup idea. Sarah's entire being flooded with gratitude and renewed hope. Here was a chance at independence, stability, and a new beginning. When she ended the call, Izzy emerged from the bedroom. "What's going on?" Sarah's face glowed with tears of joy. She relayed the news, her voice trembling with excitement. Izzy squealed and pulled her into a tight hug. "Girl, I knew you'd do great things. This is your shot, a real fresh start." And so, a door had opened when all others seemed slammed shut in her face. Sarah's resolve crystallized. She would use this program not only to survive, but to build a life that no one could ever take from her again. By the end of that day, as snow fell gently outside, Sarah curled up on Izzy's couch, laptop open, reviewing the welcome packet from the foundation. Her hand rested lightly on her unborn child, feeling small movements inside. She whispered, "I promise, little one, I'll make this work for both of us." Spring arrived in Chicago with a shy warmth, thawing the icy streets and awakening the city to new possibilities. For Sarah, it marked the start of her scholarship program. The Oprah Winfrey Leadership Foundation had partnered with Northwestern University's Entrepreneurship Hub. So Sarah, by a twist of fate, would find herself back on a campus she once knew intimately. On her first day of orientation, Sarah felt both nervous and exhilarated. She carefully dressed in a loose-fitting blouse to accommodate her growing belly and a pair of maternity slacks. The mirror revealed a woman whose features had sharpened with resolve. Though her personal life was in tatters, this course felt like a beacon in the darkness. Inside a sleek, modern conference hall, about 24 other women mingled, some young prodigies, others older professionals pivoting in their careers. They all seemed united by a quiet determination, a spark in their eyes that said, "We are ready to change our lives." A distinguished woman with a clipboard introduced herself as Dr. Leah McNitt, the program director. "Welcome, everyone," Dr. McNitt began. "Each of you has shown extraordinary resilience and talent. Our goal is to nurture that spark, provide resources, and watch you flourish. This is a safe space to share ideas, collaborate, and dream big." While Sarah settled into her new routine, Ethan Harrington's fortune soared. InnovaSpark had just announced a partnership with a major Silicon Valley firm. The news made headlines in tech magazines, with Ethan front and center, hailed as a visionary. Billionaires like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos were rumored to be aware of InnovaSpark's success story, though no direct collaboration had been confirmed. In short, Ethan was living the high-life helicopter rides, private dinners with venture capitalists, and board meetings in the poshest locales. It was during one such board meeting that Ethan had a brush with humility he didn't expect. Sequoia Capital's lead partner, a sober-faced woman named Margaret Shun, leveled him with a critical question about the company's future direction. "InnovaSpark is expanding rapidly, Mr. Harrington," she said, adjusting her glasses, "but I'm concerned about brand consolidation. Who exactly is your target market now? And how will you maintain consistent revenue streams without diluting the original technology?" Ethan blinked. "We'll pivot if necessary. That's the beauty of being agile." She raised an eyebrow. "Agility is one thing, but without a clear strategic plan, you risk losing credibility. I hear the staff turnover has been high lately. Do you have a plan to address employee satisfaction?" Heat rose in his cheeks. He was used to breezing through these interactions with charm and bravado, but Margaret Shun didn't appear swayed by a surface-level confidence. "We're hiring top talent from across the country," he replied stiffly, "and we have a robust benefits package in place." Unconvinced, she simply nodded, made a note on her tablet, and moved on. But Ethan sensed a crack. For the first time, he realized that being a flashy founder wasn't enough to secure unwavering investor faith. He needed to tighten the ship if he wanted to keep it sailing forward. Back at Northwestern's Entrepreneurship Center, Sarah immersed herself in lectures, team projects, and mentorship sessions. She marveled at how the business world had evolved since she last studied. Concepts like AI integration, growth hacking, and sustainable venture funding now dominated discussions. As she took meticulous notes, she felt the baby kick, a gentle reminder that she was no longer alone in this journey. One afternoon, Dr. McNitt introduced the class to a special guest speaker, Oprah Winfrey herself, visiting to inspire the newly minted scholarship recipients. Sarah nearly trembled with excitement when Oprah walked on stage, radiating warmth and confidence. "It's easy to feel alone in your struggles," Oprah said, her voice resonating through the room. "But remember, your pain can be turned into power. Every setback is an opportunity for a comeback." Sarah fought back tears. She thought about the night Ethan threw her out, the humiliation and despair. And yet here she was, forging a new path with a supportive community around her. By the end of Oprah's talk, Sarah felt something in her chest lift, replaced by a fierce determination to succeed, not just for herself, but for the unborn child who would soon enter her life. A few weeks into the program, Sarah attended a networking event co-sponsored by the Kellogg School of Management. Clutching a small folder of her sketches and concepts, she tried to mingle, though her growing bump meant she couldn't move as swiftly through the crowded hall. She eventually found herself chatting with Jonathan Friedman, a seasoned venture capitalist known for spotting early-stage winners. "You're working on a startup idea?" he asked, noticing her folder. She hesitated, then opened it. "It's in the ideation stage. I want to create a platform that connects small e-commerce businesses to AI-driven market forecasts. Kind of a simplified, more accessible version of what big corporations use. I'm calling it Embermark for now." Jonathan flipped through her sketches and mock-ups. "Impressive. Remind me a bit of InnovaSpark, but more user-friendly, less corporate." At the mention of InnovaSpark, Sarah's stomach twisted. Fate has a twisted sense of humor, she thought. She forced a smile. "Yes, I was inspired by some of the tech disruptors in the space." Jonathan nodded. "The difference is you're focusing on smaller retailers, correct? That's a huge market segment, often ignored by larger analytics firms." Sarah brightened. "Exactly. Most mom-and-pop shops can't afford advanced predictive analytics, but if we can harness AI in a straightforward, subscription-based model, it could revolutionize how they compete." He gave her a measured look. "When do you plan to launch?" Sarah sighed. "I'm still in the research stage. Also, my baby is due soon, so I might have to juggle motherhood and entrepreneurship." Jonathan smiled kindly. "That's challenging, but not impossible. I've known several founders who started their businesses while raising children. If you're interested, I'd be happy to connect you with some angel investors who believe in supporting women's ventures." Hope flared in her chest. "That would be amazing," she said, her voice trembling with gratitude. Jonathan pulled out a business card. "Send me an email. Let's set something up." As he walked away, Sarah glanced down at the card, heart racing. This could be the lifeline she needed: funding, connections, and validation that her idea had merit. A part of her also felt uneasy about the mention of InnovaSpark. She wondered how close Jonathan was to Ethan, but she quickly pushed the thought aside. She had learned the hard way that dwelling on the past only clouded her future. While Sarah's stars seemed to be rising, Ethan was dealing with unforeseen complications. In the hush of his corner office, he stared at a spiraling spreadsheet. The board demanded swift growth, but the team was exhausted. Projects were delayed, investor pressure was mounting, and employee morale was dropping. The once lavish perks he offered, like gourmet lunches and weekend retreats, no longer sufficed to mask the stress. Late one evening, he found himself alone, scanning through social media. He came across a photo of an old friend from college hosting a baby shower for his wife. With a pang, Ethan realized how out of touch he was with simpler joys. He quickly dismissed the feeling. Those joys wouldn't make me millions. Yet the twinge of something, call it guilt or regret, lingered. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Sarah pored over her Embermark project, emailing Jonathan Friedman a refined pitch deck. Each slide was carefully crafted, highlighting market opportunities and revenue projections. She was exhausted but couldn't let up. The baby's kicks became her metronome, reminding her of the stakes. She worked through Braxton Hicks contractions, through swirling emotions of betrayal and fear. Always, the vision of a stable future fueled her. As fate would have it, a month later, Sarah's plan to pitch Embermark to Jonathan's network was scheduled on the same day as InnovaSpark's big product demo for major investors. While Ethan showcased new features to woo potential clients, Sarah stood in a modest conference room, presenting Embermark's simpler but innovative approach to a group of angel investors. Her hand shook slightly as she clicked through slides. She detailed how Embermark would integrate AI-driven forecasts, handle inventory management, and streamline marketing strategies for small vendors. Her voice found strength the more she believed in her solution. She fielded questions about monetization, technical feasibility, and her ability to lead the venture. Each time, she responded with clear-eyed determination, surprising even herself. By the end, a panel of 3 investors, including Jonathan Friedman, huddled in discussion. Then Jonathan turned to her and said, "Sarah, we see real potential here. We'd like to invest, provided you're willing to bring on a co-founder with a technical background to strengthen your core platform. Tears welled up at her eyes, but she blinked them away, determined to appear professional. "I already have someone in mind," she said. "A former classmate from Northwestern who's now a software architect. We've discussed collaborating." Jonathan nodded. "Excellent. We'll draw up a term sheet. Let's start with $250,000 in seed funding, with the possibility of more once you hit milestones." Sarah thanked them profusely, her words tumbling out in a mix of disbelief and euphoria. After the handshakes, she excused herself to the hallway, then promptly burst into tears of vindication, of hope, of an unspoken "I told you so," aimed at the memory of Ethan's disdain. That evening, she collapsed onto Izzy's couch, physically and emotionally drained. She was only a month away from her due date, but she felt an electric surge of optimism. She texted her mother, who lived out of state, sharing the good news. She even allowed herself a small, secret smile at the thought of Ethan eventually hearing about her success. Not revenge, exactly, just a quiet satisfaction that she was not, in fact, deadweight. Yet, as she lay there rubbing her belly, she couldn't help but feel a wave of apprehension. She had no illusions about how hard this journey would be. Balancing a newborn with a fledgling company might be the toughest challenge of her life, but she had faith in one indisputable truth. She was in control of her destiny now, forging a new life, not defined by the cruelty of a husband who cast her out, but by the strength she found within. Looking at the clock, she realized it was nearly midnight, the same hour of her darkest day, not so long ago. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you to the universe for second chances, for unexpected allies, and for the unwavering resilience she never knew she possessed." With the seed investment secured, Sarah threw herself into building Embermark. She teamed up with Paul, her former Northwestern classmate. A brilliant programmer with a knack for machine learning, Paul was intrigued by Sarah's idea of creating AI tools specifically geared toward small businesses. Together, they set up a cramped workspace in a shared office building near the Loop. It was a far cry from the opulence of Ethan's glass-walled Novaspark headquarters, but it had heart and grit, exactly what Sarah needed. By the time Sarah was 8 months pregnant, Embermark's prototype was taking shape. They still had numerous technical challenges, but the path forward was clearer each day. Sarah's schedule was relentless. Morning calls with potential partners, afternoons tweaking marketing strategies, and evenings in front of her laptop, fine-tuning business models while dealing with swollen ankles and periodic contractions. Meanwhile, Ethan found himself wrestling within Novaspark's growing pains. The once celebrated corporate culture was cracking under the weight of deadlines and high investor expectations. Employees complained about burnout, and abrupt firings became more frequent. Ethan's top engineers threatened to quit if working conditions didn't improve. To make matters worse, rumors circulated about a potential class action lawsuit related to the stressful environment that allegedly led to mental health issues among staff. Sitting in his luxurious corner office, Ethan glanced at the city lights beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. He was exhausted, though he'd never admit it. A tabloid headline about him flashed on his phone screen. Novaspark CEO in hot water over hostile work environment. He grimaced and tossed the phone aside. Ever since Sequoia Capital had hinted they might withhold a subsequent funding round if employee attrition wasn't addressed, Ethan felt the noose tightening around his once glorified startup. One Friday evening, Sarah attended a local tech meetup where entrepreneurs mingled over cocktails and hors d'oeuvres. She was tired and uncomfortable, her belly heavy, but these events were critical for building Embermark's visibility. Paul helped her navigate through the crowd, collecting business cards and discussing potential collaborations. Suddenly, she spotted a familiar figure in a tailored suit across the room, Ethan Harrington. Her heart thundered in her chest. Of all the places, she hadn't seen him in person since that fateful night he had thrown her out. In a flash, memories of that moment, the icy sidewalk, the echo of the door slamming surged back. She felt her stomach tighten in a mix of anxiety and a strange, simmering anger. Ethan was engaged in animated conversation with a group of investors, including Jonathan Friedman. Dread coiled in Sarah's stomach. Jonathan was her ally. He had believed in her vision. But he also had ties to Ethan, apparently. She considered leaving quietly, but the baby gave a firm kick, as if to remind her to stand her ground. Paul noticed her tense posture. "Are you okay, Sarah?" She swallowed hard. "That's my ex-husband, Ethan Harrington, the CEO of Innova Spark." Paul's eyes widened. "That Ethan Harrington? The one who—" She gave a quick nod, not wanting to elaborate in public. "Let's just keep a low profile." Yet fate had other plans. Jonathan, glimpsing Sarah from across the room, waved her over. Her heart pounded in her ears as she and Paul approached the circle. She could feel Ethan's gaze like a beam of cold light scanning her pregnant belly, then flitting to her face. "Jonathan," she said, maintaining composure. "It's good to see you." Jonathan smiled warmly. "Sarah, I was just bragging about Embermark to some colleagues. You remember Ethan Harrington from Innova Spark?" She nodded tightly, forcing a polite smile. "Yes, we've met." A flicker of surprise crossed Ethan's face, replaced by guardedness. He extended a hand, and Sarah shook it briefly, feeling the ghost of a tremor in her fingers. "Hello, Sarah," Ethan said quietly, his voice laced with something unreadable. Jonathan launched into an enthusiastic explanation of Sarah's startup, praising her grit and the uniqueness of Embermark's approach to small business analytics. "Sounds interesting," Ethan said smoothly. "I remember you being quite supportive of tech ventures." The words dripped with irony. Sarah's throat tightened, but she managed a level tone. "Yes, I suppose we both ended up in the same industry after all." The conversation was brief, with Jonathan guiding them toward mutual acquaintances. Sarah couldn't help but notice the tension in Ethan's jaw, the small lines of stress around his eyes. Once upon a time, she would have felt a rush of concern. Now, she just felt conflicted. Part of her wanted him to see that she was thriving without him. Part of her still ached with a sense of betrayal. When the group dispersed, Ethan caught her elbow gently. "Sarah, can we talk for a moment in private?" She hesitated, then nodded. Paul shot her a questioning look, and she gestured that she'd be fine. They stepped into a quiet corner of the venue, near a towering glass window. The city spread out before them, a sea of glittering lights. "How are you?" he asked, not quite meeting her eyes. She placed a protective hand over her belly. "Better than I thought I'd be, all things considered." A flicker of guilt seemed to cross his face. "I heard rumors you were working on a startup. Didn't realize it was with Friedman." "Now you know," she said curtly. "Congratulations on your success. I'm sure you've heard I'm pregnant." Ethan's gaze dropped to her belly, which left no room for doubt. "I have. Through the lawyers." A tense silence settled. Finally, Ethan spoke, his voice quiet. "Look, Sarah, I didn't mean for things to get so." She cut him off, her tone sharper than she intended. "You didn't mean to throw me out in the middle of the night when I was pregnant with your child?" He winced. "That situation was complicated. I was under a lot of pressure." "You were? Caring about our family?" "Yes, I know." Her eyes flashed with a bitterness she'd fought hard to bury. She thought of the baby inside her, the sleepless nights on Izzy's couch, the humiliating visits to a resource center. Ethan had stripped her of security. Yet here he was, trying to rewrite the past. He inhaled deeply. "I messed up. I see that now. I can't change what happened, but maybe I can help with finances, or—" Sarah laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "Like child support?" He nodded stiffly. "That's on the table. My attorneys can contact yours. Let's work something out." Sarah's throat felt tight. Part of her wanted to hurl the offer back in his face. Another part knew she had to think about her child. "Fine," she said at last. "We'll see where that goes. But don't think for a second that money changes what you did." He swallowed and nodded. "Understood." Before he could say more, she turned, leaving him in the hush of city lights. As she walked away, she felt a storm of emotions, swirling anger, sorrow, and surprisingly, a strange pity for him. He looked lost, worn out by the success he'd once craved. She pushed the thought aside, focusing on the future she was determined to carve out. That night, as she lay in bed at Izzy's apartment. Exhaustion weighed her down. She replayed the conversation with Ethan, the flicker of something like regret in his eyes. She tried to drown it out with memories of his cruelty, but a question gnawed at her. What if he really did want to make amends in some small way? In the weeks that followed, Ethan's lawyers reached out, proposing a settlement to cover prenatal and childbirth expenses, plus a modest monthly stipend. After consulting with Izzy and her own legal aid, Sarah agreed, reluctantly. The funds will be placed in a trust for the baby. She refused to rely on Ethan's money for Embermark, but the child deserved financial support. Life, with its own dramatic timing, didn't wait for all the legalities to settle. One morning, Sarah's water broke unexpectedly. She was alone in the Embermark office, finalizing details for an upcoming beta test. Panic and excitement roiled inside her. She managed to call Izzy, who raced over and rushed her to the hospital. After 14 hours of labor, Sarah gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. She named him Theodore, meaning gift from God. In the private hospital room, she cradled Theo in her arms, overwhelmed by a profound mixture of love, relief, and triumph. Izzy stayed by her side, snapping photos and wiping tears. Paul, though awkward around newborns, dropped by with flowers and an enormous teddy bear. Sarah gazed at her son's tiny fingers curled around her own. In that moment, the chaos of the past year faded, replaced by pure wonder. She kissed his forehead. "We made it, little one. We made it." Ethan didn't come. Word must have reached him, but he stayed away, perhaps not ready to face the consequences of fatherhood. The hospital forms listed father, unknown, by Sarah's choice. A move that stung but felt necessary. She refused to let his name overshadow Theo's first breath of life. In a quiet moment, while Theo slept, Sarah stared out the window at the bustling city below. A surge of gratitude welled up. She had found a path forward when everything seemed lost. She had a healthy baby, a budding startup, and a resolute spirit. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a new idea was forming a vision of the day she would reclaim not just her personal life, but also stand in a position of power that even Ethan couldn't ignore. Little did she know, the grandest twist of fate still awaited her. 6 months. That's all it took for Embermark to go from a fledgling startup to a buzzworthy disruptor in the tech world. With Theo cradled in one arm and her laptop balanced on the other, Sarah juggled motherhood and entrepreneurship with tireless determination. Sleep-deprived, but driven, she led the company with heart, and the results showed. Small businesses flocked to Embermark's affordable, AI-driven analytics. Fed up with overpriced, bloated tools, they embraced Sarah's user-friendly platform. Media outlets took notice. Headlines called her the single mom CEO shaking up Silicon Valley. Photos of Sarah, baby carrier strapped on as she typed on her laptop, circulated widely, capturing public admiration. Meanwhile, Ethan Harrington's world was unraveling. Though InnovaSpark had once soared, it was now faltering. The company had grown too fast, lost focus, and was bleeding talent. Top engineers quit. Investors grew anxious. PR scandals and rumors of a toxic work culture eroded its image. Sequoia Capital's Margaret Shun, once supportive, now pressured the board for new leadership. Then one morning, Jonathan Friedman called Sarah. "There's an offer on the table," he said. "A private equity firm wants to acquire Embermark." Sarah's breath caught. "Seriously? They see real growth potential, and they want you to stay on as CEO." But Jonathan hesitated. "They're also interested in a dual play, possibly merging Embermark with InnovaSpark." Sarah went still. "You mean I'd be acquiring Ethan's company?" "Yes. InnovaSpark still has valuable patents and infrastructure. Embermark has the traction. Together, they dominate the market. They want you at the helm." The thought was surreal. The very company that had propelled Ethan to fortune and destroyed her marriage might soon be hers. Vindication mixed with hesitation. "I won't do this for revenge," she said. "Only if it makes sense for the future." Exactly what I hoped you'd say. A week later, Sarah sat across from Ethan in a sleek, glass-walled boardroom. Representatives from both companies and the private equity firm flanked them. Paul sat at her side. Jonathan, as always, looked confident. Ethan, though dressed in his usual sharp suit, looked exhausted, his jaw tight. "Let's begin," said Davis Green, the equity firm's rep. "We propose a stock swap merger. Embermark absorbs InnovaSpark. Ms. Harrington remains CEO of the new entity." A murmur spread through the InnovaSpark board. Ethan stiffened. "InnovaSpark still holds immense value. This isn't a fire sale." Jonathan responded calmly. "That value is sinking. Embermark is growing. The merger keeps both relevant." Margaret Shun, appearing via video, added, "We want a path to profitability. Embermark has the clearest one." Sarah finally spoke. "This isn't about punishing anyone. It's about creating something stronger. InnovaSpark has good tech. We have the audience. Let's build something sustainable." Ethan looked at her for a long beat. He said nothing, but the resistance in his posture faded just slightly. The negotiations dragged on for weeks. Legal teams wrangled over valuations and equity shares. Sarah insisted Ethan's involvement be limited to an optional advisory role. His stake would be significantly diluted, but he'd retain some connection if he chose. When the final deal was signed, Embermark officially acquired InnovaSpark. The new entity would be called EmberSpark. On signing day, Sarah entered the same high-rise where she'd once been dismissed from meetings as just the wife. She now sat at the head of the table. Ethan sat across from her, stoic. As the final documents were stamped and passed around, Sarah felt a quiet sense of closure. Not triumph in the petty sense, but something deeper. She had taken back what was once used to belittle her, and she had turned it into power. Afterward, Ethan approached. "You did it," he said, voice low. Sarah turned. "No, we did what was right for both companies." He studied her. "You've built something remarkable." She nodded. "You had your moment. Now it's mine." A pause. "I didn't see this coming. Not from you." "That's because you stopped looking," she replied, her tone even. "You forgot who stood beside you when it all began." There was regret in his eyes. "I know I hurt you more than I can ever fix." Sarah's gaze didn't waver. "And yet, here we are." He sighed. "If it's not too late, I want to be part of Theo's life. However you see fit." She looked down for a moment, thinking, "We'll take it slow. He deserves a chance to know his father. But you'll need to earn both our trust." Ethan nodded. "Fair." Later that night, Sarah stood by the window of her new office in the EmberSpark building, the Chicago skyline glowing around her. Theo's photo sat on her desk, smiling in a little bow tie. Her journey from midnight on the sidewalk to the top of the tech world had been anything but easy. But she made it, and this was only the beginning. After the acquisition, EmberSpark pulsed with new energy. Sarah built a leadership team that blended Embermark's scrappy innovation with InnovaSpark's powerful tech. Employees once ready to quit now felt revived under her compassionate leadership. The office, a renovated industrial loft downtown, buzzed with collaboration and sunlight. No more corner office elitism, just a flat, open culture. Sarah normalized motherhood at work. Theo, now a lively toddler, often visited after daycare. Staff adored him, and Sarah's visible dual role as CEO and mother inspired admiration and respect. She made it clear women didn't have to choose between ambition and family. The company's upgraded analytics suite, fusing InnovaSpark's patented algorithms with Embermark's usability, was a hit. Small businesses long priced out of tech solutions flocked to what the press dubbed the people's analytics. Profits climbed. Sequoia Capital's Margaret Shun praised Sarah's culture of innovation and empathy. Meanwhile, Sarah and Ethan's dynamic remained cautiously civil. He began supervised visits with Theo in parks and cafes, trying in small, awkward steps to rebuild what he'd thrown away. Though their romance was over, a delicate co-parenting rhythm emerged. Ethan even lingered after board meetings to bounce a ball with Theo. He was no longer the domineering CEO, just a man trying to be a father. Recognition followed. A year in, Forbes named Sarah to its top 30 under 40 list, hailing her as a mother mogul and trailblazer. She read the article with quiet tears. It wasn't about fame. It was proof that she had reclaimed her story. Then came the tech world's biggest stage, a product launch at McCormick Place. Sarah stood backstage, nerves fluttering. A note card in hand read, "Believe in yourself. Always." Paul gave a thumbs up. She smiled. Showtime. On stage, Sarah spoke with poise, blending product vision and personal resilience. In the front row, she spotted Ethan. He nodded once, respectfully. When she finished, the audience rose in a standing ovation. For a moment, the world saw what she had always known. She wasn't broken. She was reborn. That night, on the Ember Spark rooftop, Sarah gazed at the Chicago skyline, mug of tea in hand. Ethan joined her, quiet beside her. "You are incredible," he said softly. She nodded. "Thanks." A pause passed between them, filled with wind and memory. "I'm proud of you," Ethan added, more than I ever said before. She didn't reply at first. Then, "We can't undo the past, but we can shape the future." For Theo. He nodded, mist in his eyes. "I'd like to try." They weren't lovers anymore, but they were something else. Co-parents, maybe even allies. As Ethan left, Sarah remained, staring into the lights reflected on Lake Michigan. From the ashes of betrayal, she had risen not for revenge, but for herself, for her son, and for the life she now owned with pride. Years melted into a tapestry of shared moments and quiet triumphs. Ember Spark, under Sarah's visionary leadership, didn't just thrive, it redefined ethical tech, becoming a beacon of innovation with a conscience. Theo grew into a bright, kind-hearted boy, equally comfortable in a boardroom watching his mom command a meeting or at a park, kicking a soccer ball with his dad. The bitterness of the past had faded, replaced by a mature understanding and a shared commitment to their son. One sunny Saturday, Sarah watched from a park bench as Ethan patiently taught a 5-year-old Theo how to tie his shoelaces. There was a gentleness in Ethan now, a humility she'd never seen in his meteoric rise. He looked up, caught her eye, and offered a small, genuine smile. She returned it. The scars of their past were still there, but they no longer ached. They were simply reminders of a journey that had forged her into the woman she was today. Izzy, now Theo's godmother and a successful graphic designer, often joined them for these casual family outings, a testament to the enduring power of friendship. Sarah knew her story wasn't just about business success. It was about reclaiming her narrative, about transforming pain into purpose, and about building a legacy of strength and compassion for her son. She had found her happily ever after, not in a fairy tale mansion, but in the messy, beautiful reality of a life built on resilience, love, and the unwavering belief in her own worth. The lights of Chicago still glittered, but now they felt like they were shining for her, reflecting the brilliant future she had forged. And so, in the end, Sarah Harrington proved that the darkest trials can spark the brightest flames of triumph. Once cast aside at midnight, she rose to become the visionary leader of Ember Spark, a company that outshone even the empire her ex-husband had built. With unwavering grit and the love for her child guiding her, Sarah rewrote her destiny. She didn't simply survive heartbreak. She transformed it into a catalyst for greatness. If her journey has inspired you, if it's reminded you that no betrayal, no setback, and no cruel twist of fate can truly extinguish the power of hope, then let Sarah's story live on in your heart. Please like, share, and subscribe so we can continue exploring stories of resilience and redemption. Every gesture of support fuels our mission to spotlight untold tales that remind us we all have the strength to rise again. Thank you for watching, and remember to keep believing.